Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. So I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. I want to speak with you frankly and candidly, as I do every day, about a storm gathering over America and the world. I am not speaking about the winter storm that is about to descend on our country and which will, no doubt, wreak havoc in the West, East, North, and South. I am talking about another storm, and that storm is caused by Donald Trump, the President of the United States. I just finished a book published by Public Affairs in New York called Storm Over the Capitol, an oral history of January 6th by Mary Claire Jalnick. There is a storm brewing, and what happened on January 6th was highlighted yesterday by what happened in Washington. The testimony of Jack Smith before the House of Representatives. And it was fascinating. He opened his testimony by saying, "No one should be above the law in our country, and the law required that he, Donald Trump, be held to account, so that is what I did." And of course, the case against Donald Trump is clear. On January 6th, the reason people were in Washington is because Donald Trump summoned them. The reason there was violence is because of the Big Steal accusation, which I hasten to point out Donald Trump is still making. Even on his trip to Switzerland, he said it. There is no doubt in my mind that Jack Smith told the truth. What was the Republican response? It was to blast him, to criticize him. And Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, said it was always about politics. Jamie Raskin, a Democrat, said maybe for them. But he went on to say, but for us, it's all about the rule of law. That's the whole point, ladies and gentlemen, the rule of law. And what we witnessed yesterday was the arrogance of power. Understand, what happened on January 6th may have happened 4 years ago, but what happened on January 6th left a permanent stain on our country. This is a simple reality. Now, I want to talk, if I can, about the question of absolute immunity. You heard the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, talk about absolute immunity for ICE officers. Well, yesterday, he retreated from that position, as if he'd never said it. The rewriting of history is appalling, and that's part of my issue here. Because what really happened, and what is happening every day, is that the White House can no longer be trusted. This president can no longer be trusted. And I want to give, as an example, a doctored photo, which was put up on the White House website, Truth Social, right? Well, actually, Truth Social is not the White House website, but the White House treats it as if it were the website. The White House press office doctored a photo. And what are the implications? What are the repercussions? Nothing. And I want to be clear. Someone who breaks the law, no matter who they are, as Jack Smith pointed out, is not above the law. A person who breaks the law must be held accountable. And does anybody doubt, listening to the sound of my voice, that Donald Trump has broken the law repeatedly? And then he uses the law, as he has the right to do. Are you aware that Trump is now suing J.P. Morgan over his account closure? You understand that the reason the account was closed was because of what happened on January 6th. And Donald Trump is now suing J.P. Morgan Chase and its CEO, Jamie Dimon, for $5 billion after allegations that J.P. Morgan stopped providing banking services to him and his businesses for political reasons. This president is litigious, and this president thinks he is above the law. No one is above the law. And that leads me to the next point. As you know, the president has established something called the Board of Peace. Well, you may have heard that he invited Prime Minister Carney of Canada to serve on that board. And now, because Carney made a statement, an eloquent statement, a powerful statement about Donald Trump and his conduct, well, guess what? Donald Trump has disinvited Prime Minister Carney. My friends, there is something terribly wrong. And then there is the case of a 5-year-old boy who was arrested by ICE. And by the way, neither the boy nor his father were here illegally. They were applying for asylum. All their papers are in order. But it would seem that it doesn't matter to ICE. It doesn't matter to the Border Patrol who's here legally and who is not. This, to me, is of profound concern because it's not one incident. It's incident after incident. And I began this podcast by suggesting there was a storm over America, and there clearly is. And there is also a storm over the world. This is a matter of supreme importance. And speaking of supreme, the Supreme Court is about to render 2 major verdicts, which will determine whether there is any control on this president's power. First, of course, the question of whether a president can unilaterally impose tariffs. I want to be clear. The Constitution is clear, and I believe the Supreme Court will be clear. And then there was the question of whether or not a member of the Federal Reserve can be removed by the president simply because he wants her off. And the answer is the Supreme Court is deciding that. I indicated yesterday that conservative justices on the court seem not to be inclined to go along with Donald Trump if he loses this case and he loses the tariff case. It will be a huge blow, and the balance of power may well be restored. And that's what we want. We want it restored. Absolutely. This is of serious concern, as is the abuse of power by the Department of Justice and the FBI, issuing subpoenas to the governor of the state of Minnesota, to the mayor of St. Paul, to the mayor of Minneapolis, and to other elected public officials who are perceived by the Trump administration to be enemies. That's right, enemies. And look what they did to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom went to Switzerland to participate in the World Economic Conference. And then he was denied the time which he was to be granted in order to speak publicly in an official forum. Why? Because the White House demanded it. And I spoke yesterday, but I want to repeat, the whole idea of this kind of control by a president of the United States violates every principle of the Constitution. I want to be clear. A lot rests on what the Supreme Court does, and a lot rests on what Congress does. What I witnessed yesterday during the Jack Smith hearings violated everything that I believe the Congress needs to do, and it was because of the Republicans in Congress. It would seem that the Republicans in Congress are willing to abdicate their right, whether it is to deal with tariffs or to deal with a renegade president. They simply roll over and play dead. This, to me, is why there is a storm over America. Can you imagine? Is it conceivable that in the United States of America, this storm is raging? Now, we know that theoretically, things have calmed down a little bit overseas because Trump backed down on Greenland, although we have no idea what, in fact, was negotiated or agreed to. And we have yet to hear from NATO on this. But there is no doubt that this president doesn't give a tinker's damn one way or the other. But he is a bully. And if you stand up to a bully and you respond to a bully, that bully generally backs down. And that's what we saw with the president on Greenland. And yes, indeed, what the president says about Canada matters. Let me point out to you that disinviting Prime Minister of Canada from serving on the Peace Board doesn't mean much because there is no Peace Board. You understand it, I understand it. It is an illusion created by Donald Trump with a cost, $1 billion. There is yet something else which I need to talk about this morning. That was the proposal made yesterday by Jared Kushner in Switzerland about the question of the future of Gaza. Did you see the design for luxury operations in Gaza? Has he forgotten what has happened in Gaza? This, to me, is shocking and appalling, and frankly, shows the insensitivity of Donald Trump and his administration. I want to point out as well that the New York Times story, which did not receive the attention it should have, shows that in the last year, the first year of Trump's second term, the president and his family have profited to the tune of about $1.4 billion in terms of profit. Can you imagine the corruption that we are witnessing in this country? Indeed, my friends, there is a storm over America. It is not just in Minneapolis. It is not just ICE. It is not just what is happening in terms of tariffs. It is not just a president seeming to feel that he is an absolute monarch. It is not just what happened to Jack Smith. Oh, by the way, you heard about the Clintons being held in contempt of Congress? Look, what Bill and Hillary Clinton did or didn't do, I frankly am not enamored of either one of them at this point. Certainly the Epstein case, which has faded from the headlines, deserves to be front and center. The White House obstruction deserves to be front and center. But instead, the Republicans in Congress have decided it much easier to simply hold Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress. Well, let me tell you, they should have testified. There's no reason why they shouldn't. But the simple reality is that this is again an abuse of power by Republicans in Congress. Are they holding Donald Trump accountable? Are they summoning Donald Trump before Congress and being held in contempt of Congress for his actions? Because remember, the person obstructing the Epstein matter is Donald Trump, who could release all the files immediately. I want you to understand that the storm that I am addressing here, the storm against America, this book, Storm at the Capitol, is an important book. It's important because it symbolizes the storm that America faces. We have an out-of-control president. There is no doubt about it. And may I be crystal clear, a president who has much on his mind, who is now suing J.P. Morgan and Jeremy Dimon, is completely out of control. And let me point out, $5 billion? Do I sound agitated? Do I sound upset? I am. I'm hoping the Supreme Court holds Donald Trump accountable. I'm hoping that in the vote that will take place in November, the American people will hold Donald Trump accountable. I hope that the world will stand up to Donald Trump on Greenland as they have, but as they must do. And I hope that the Prime Minister of Canada's wise words, which so aggravated the president, are heard and repeated worldwide. This is an appeal for the future of our country. And make no mistake, the future of our country and the free world, all of that and more is at stake. We must respond, and we will respond as free people. This I believe. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. Please do share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. And we intend to continue to speak out on these issues. This show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on the advertising support. And we hope that you understand that our intention is to continue to speak the truth as we see it on Around the Political World with John Rothman. I want to say a big thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program. Gogo, thank you. Well, it's the weekend, and now we have to wait and see until Monday all the news that will break and what will happen. I'll be back on Monday, and believe me, there will be a lot to talk about. Right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then. Have a great weekend.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.